Hell Is for Heroes was not just another World War II war movie. It was a battlefield of egos, a powder keg of creative tensions, and a cinematic experiment that nearly destroyed everyone involved. While audiences watched a gritty tale of World War II combat, behind the camera, a different war was raging, one between a rebellious Steve McQueen and a frustrated director, between studio executives and creative visionaries, between reality and Hollywood's version of it. What you are about to discover will change how you see this classic war film forever. The secrets hidden in those foxholes run deeper than you could imagine. Today, we are revealing 20 weird facts about Hell Is for Heroes that will make your jaw drop faster than a soldier hitting the deck. And stick around until the end for a bonus fact that connects this 1962 film to one of the most controversial military operations in modern history. Hit that like button and subscribe because you are about to enter the real hell of Hollywood filmmaking. Number 20. The film that almost killed Bobby Darin. Bobby Darin was not just struggling with his transition from singer to actor, he was fighting for his life. The role of Corporal Dave Hackett took such a psychological toll that Darin began experiencing severe panic attacks on set. "I'd wake up in the middle of the night screaming," he later confessed. The actor's method approach to portraying a soldier under extreme stress bled into his real life, blurring the lines between performance and reality. What audiences did not know was that Darin had a pre-existing heart condition that was exacerbated by the intense emotional demands of the role. During one particularly grueling scene where his character is pinned down by enemy fire, Darin collapsed on set, not from acting, but from an actual cardiac event. The production kept this incident quiet, fearing negative publicity. Darin would never fully recover his health, and this film marked the beginning of his decline, proving that sometimes the casualties of war extend far beyond the battlefield. Number 19, the studio's censorship battle. Paramount Pictures did not just want to make a war movie, they wanted to control history. The studio executives demanded that Don Siegel remove any scenes that portrayed American soldiers as anything less than heroic. They wanted propaganda, not truth. Siegel later stated in an interview, "The most heated battle centered on a scene where McQueen's character, Reese, contemplates desertion. Studio heads insisted this would demoralize audiences and undermine the image of American military valor. Siegel fought to keep the scene, arguing that it showed the human side of soldiers under extreme pressure. What audiences did not know was that this scene was nearly cut entirely and only remained in the film after Siegel threatened to walk away from the project. The studio also demanded changes to the film's ending, wanting a more triumphant conclusion. The compromise ending where Reese survives but is seriously wounded was a direct result of this clash between artistic vision and commercial concerns. This battle between director and studio represents the eternal struggle in Hollywood between authenticity and marketability. Number 18, Steve McQueen's rebellion went beyond his character. Steve McQueen was not just playing a rebellious soldier, he was waging war against the entire production. His insubordination on set became legendary, with the actor frequently disappearing for hours, forcing costly production delays. "He'd just vanish," recalled assistant director Robert Totten. "We'd have to send people out to find him." McQueen's behavior was not just unprofessional, it was deliberately disruptive. He would intentionally flub lines during takes he found boring, knowing that Siegel was a perfectionist who would demand multiple retakes. The actor's most egregious act of rebellion came when he deliberately damaged a military vehicle that was needed for a crucial scene, claiming it was an accident. What audiences did not know was that this was not just method acting, it was a calculated power play. McQueen was testing his growing star power against the studio and director, seeing how far he could push before facing consequences. His behavior created a toxic atmosphere on set, with other actors caught in the crossfire of his war against authority. This was not just difficult behavior, it was sabotage disguised as artistic temperament. Number 17, the real veterans who walked off set. The military consultants hired to ensure authenticity did not just quit, they walked off in protest. 3 World War II veterans, initially brought on to train the actors and advise on military procedures, abandoned the project after what they called Hollywood's disrespect for reality. The breaking point came during the filming of the reconnaissance scene where McQueen's character moves through enemy territory. "They had him doing everything wrong," said consultant James D. O'Brien in a rare interview. "He was making noise, exposing himself unnecessarily. It was a suicide mission, not reconnaissance." When the consultants protested these inaccuracies, director Don Siegel dismissed their concerns, arguing that dramatic effect trumped realism. What audiences did not know was that these veterans were so disgusted by the film's portrayal of military tactics that they asked to have their names removed from the credit. Their departure left the production without expert guidance, leading to even more historical inaccuracies. This clash between Hollywood's version of war and actual combat experience highlights the ongoing tension between entertainment and authenticity in war films. Number 16, the secret rewrites by an uncredited screenwriter. Robert Pirosh, was not just the credited screenwriter, he was the third writer to work on the script. The original screenplay by Richard Carr was deemed too conventional by producer Frank Capra Jr., who brought in Pirosh to inject more realism and grit. But what audiences did not know was that even after Pirosh's rewrite, the script underwent another secret revision by an uncredited writer, Steve McQueen himself. The actor, dissatisfied with his character's dialogue, began making unauthorized changes during filming. Steve would just say whatever he wanted, recalled co-star Bobby Darin. Sometimes it was brilliant, sometimes it was nonsense. Director Don Siegel initially resisted these ad-libs, but eventually incorporated many of them into the final film. McQueen's most significant contribution was the character's cynical worldview and anti-authoritarian attitude, which reflected the actor's own personality more than the original screenplay. This unauthorized rewriting created tension on set, but ultimately resulted in a more authentic performance. The fact that McQueen's contributions went uncredited represents the ongoing struggle in Hollywood between actors and writers over creative control. Number 15, the battle scenes that caused real injuries. The explosions were not just special effects, they were dangerous. During the filming of the climactic battle sequence, several stuntmen sustained serious injuries due to improperly timed pyrotechnics. It was chaos, recalled special effects coordinator Joe Lombardi. We were working with limited time and budget, and corners were cut. The most severe incident involved stunt performer Hal Needham, who suffered second-degree burns when a mortar effect exploded too close to his position. What audiences did not know was that Steve McQueen, who insisted on performing his own stunts, narrowly escaped serious injury in the same sequence when a piece of shrapnel from an explosion struck inches from his face. Production was halted for several days while safety protocols were reviewed, but the rushed schedule meant that some risks remained. The film's realistic battle scenes came at a real human cost, blurring the line between performance and actual danger. These incidents highlight the physical toll of filmmaking, especially in an era before modern safety standards and computer-generated effects made dangerous sequences safer to capture. Number 14. The hidden anti-war message censored by the studio. Hell is for Heroes was not just a war movie, it was a statement against war that the studio tried to suppress. Director Don Siegel, a World War II veteran himself, infused the film with a cynical view of combat that was at odds with the patriotic narratives common in early 1960s cinema. The most overt anti-war elements appeared in scenes where the soldiers questioned the purpose of their mission and expressed doubt about their leadership. "We're just pawns in their game," says one character in a line that nearly got cut. What audiences did not know was that Paramount executives demanded the removal of several scenes they felt were too critical of the military. Establishment. Siegel fought to keep these elements, arguing that they were essential to the film's authenticity. The compromise resulted in a more subtle anti-war message that some viewers missed entirely. This clash between the director's vision and the studio's commercial concerns reflects the broader cultural tensions of the early 1960s, as America was on the cusp of the Vietnam era and growing skepticism about military intervention. The film's hidden critique of war makes it more progressive than many of its contemporaries. Number 13, the casting coup that almost fell apart. Steve McQueen was not the first choice for the lead role. That was Paul Newman, who turned it down after creative differences with director Don Siegel. What audiences did not know was that McQueen's casting was a last-minute decision that created tension from day one. McQueen, still building his reputation as a bankable star, clashed with Siegel over the character's motivations. "Steve wanted to make him a hero, but I saw him as a survivor," Siegel later explained. This fundamental disagreement led to on-set arguments and changes to the script. Even more controversial was the casting of Bobby Darin, primarily known as a singer, in a dramatic role. Studio executives were skeptical, but Capra Jr. pushed for the unconventional choice, hoping Darin's popularity would attract younger audiences. Darin's inexperience showed during early takes, requiring multiple retakes that frustrated both the director and his co-stars. The casting chemistry never quite gelled, resulting in a film where the characters feel more like isolated individuals than a cohesive unit. This casting discord mirrors the film's themes of alienation and disconnection among soldiers in combat. Number 12. The budget cuts that forced creative solutions. Hell is for Heroes was not just filmed on a tight budget, it was a production constantly fighting financial constraints. Originally budgeted at $2 million, the film saw its funding slashed midway through production when studio executives expressed concerns about its commercial potential. "We were literally counting pennies," recalled production designer Henry Bumstead. What audiences did not know was that these budget cuts directly impacted the film's visual storytelling. The elaborate battle sequences envisioned in the script had to be scaled back. with fewer extras and simplified explosions. Director Don Siegel compensated by using creative camera techniques to create the illusion of a larger conflict. We used close-ups and sound design to suggest more action than we could actually show, Siegel explained. The most significant compromise came in the film's climax, where a planned full-scale assault was reduced to a more intimate confrontation between a handful of characters. These limitations forced the filmmakers to focus on character development rather than spectacle, inadvertently strengthening the film's psychological realism. The budget constraints, while challenging, ultimately resulted in a more intimate and character-driven war movie that stood apart from its big-budget contemporaries. Number 11. The on-set romance that threatened the production. Steve McQueen was not just causing trouble with his rebellious behavior, he was disrupting the production through a secret affair with a script supervisor. The relationship, which began early in filming, created tension on set as McQueen frequently disappeared with his lover, causing costly delays. Steve would just vanish during crucial scenes, recalled assistant director Robert Totten. We'd have to send people to find him. What audiences did not know was that this was not just a casual fling, it was a serious relationship that would eventually lead to McQueen's divorce from his first wife, Niley Adams. The affair reached a breaking point when McQueen's lover was discovered passing script changes to him directly, bypassing director Don Siegel. This unauthorized collaboration resulted in scenes being filmed differently than planned, infuriating Siegel and other cast members. The production team considered firing McQueen but realized he was too essential to the film. Instead, they imposed strict rules about his behavior on set. This behind-the-scenes drama mirrors the film's themes of rebellion against authority, with McQueen blurring the lines between his character and his real-life persona. The affair added another layer of tension to an already fraught production. Number 10. The racial tensions reflected on screen. Hell is for Heroes was not just about war, it was a reflection of America's racial tensions in the early 1960s. What audiences did not know was that the casting of African-American actor James Edwards as Sergeant Pike was a deliberate statement by director Don Siegel, who wanted to include a more diverse representation of American soldiers than was typical in war films of the era. This decision created tension on set, particularly with Steve McQueen, who reportedly made several racially insensitive remarks about Edwards, both on and off camera. There were uncomfortable moments, recalled co-star Bob Newhart. Steve could be difficult, and his attitude sometimes reflected the worst aspects of that time. The most contentious scene involved Edwards' character giving orders to white soldiers, which some cast members felt was unrealistic for the World War II period. Siegel insisted on keeping these scenes, arguing that they reflected the reality of integrated military units. This on-screen representation of racial equality was progressive for its time, but came at the cost of real tensions among the cast. The film's subtle commentary on race adds another layer of meaning to its portrayal of military life, highlighting the social changes that were beginning to transform American society. Go ahead and like and subscribe because the facts we are about to reveal get even more shocking, including a near-fatal accident that was covered up by the studio and a secret connection to the John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassination. Number 9. The cover-up of a near-fatal accident. During the filming of a trench scene, a section of the set collapsed, trapping 3 actors under several tons of dirt and debris. What audiences did not know was that this was not just a minor incident. It was a near-fatal accident that the studio deliberately covered up. Bobby Darin, Nick Adams, and Harry Guardino were buried for nearly 10 minutes before crew members could dig them out. I really thought I was going to die there, Darin later confessed in an unpublished interview. The most severely injured was Adams, who suffered a broken rib and concussion but was back on set the next day after studio executives pressured him not to report the incident. Production was halted for only a few hours, and no official record of the accident exists in the studio archives. The cover-up was orchestrated to avoid negative publicity and potential insurance complications. Director Don Siegel was reportedly furious about the safety shortcuts that led to the collapse, but was overruled by producers who wanted to maintain the shooting schedule. This incident highlights the dangerous working conditions in Hollywood during this era, where commercial concerns often trumped safety protocols. The fact that this potentially deadly accident was hidden from the public for decades demonstrates the studio's power to control the narrative surrounding their productions. Number 8. The psychological warfare used on the actors. Don Siegel was not just directing actors, he was subjecting them to psychological manipulation to extract authentic performances. What audiences did not know was that Siegel employed military-style techniques to create genuine tension and stress among the cast. He kept us on edge constantly, recalled Bob Newhart. We never knew what was real and what was part of his method. The most extreme example came during the filming of the foxhole scenes, where Siegel had the actors stay in their positions for hours without breaks, simulating the discomfort and anxiety of real combat conditions. He also deliberately spread misinformation among the cast about call times and scene schedules, creating confusion and frustration that mirrored the chaos of war. Steve McQueen, ever the rebel, caught on to these tactics and began resisting them, leading to further conflicts between actor and director. Darin, however, was deeply affected by this psychological approach, with his anxiety worsening as production continued. This method of creating authentic emotional states through real stress raises ethical questions about the boundaries of directing. Siegel's techniques, while effective on screen, took a real toll on the mental health of his actors, blurring the line between performance and genuine psychological distress. Number 7. The military equipment scandal. The military equipment used in Hell is for Heroes was not just authentic, it was stolen. What audiences did not know was that several key props, including the film's central machine gun and various communication devices, were procured through questionable means. Production manager Henry Bumstead later admitted that certain arrangements were made with military contacts to borrow equipment that was technically unavailable for civilian use. The most valuable item, a World War II-era Browning M 1919 machine gun, disappeared from an Army National Guard armory shortly before filming began. When military officials inquired about the missing equipment, the production claimed it was a replica, not realizing they were speaking to an expert who immediately recognized it as authentic. The scandal was hushed up through studio intervention, with Paramount executives making a donation to the armory that exceeded the equipment's value. This ethical breach reflects the sometimes questionable methods employed by Hollywood productions to achieve authenticity. The fact that the film's most realistic elements were obtained illegally adds a layer of irony to a movie about soldiers following rules in the chaos of war. This behind-the-scenes criminality demonstrates the lengths to which filmmakers would go to create believable worlds, even when it meant crossing legal and ethical boundaries. Number 6. The secret connection to the Bay of Pigs invasion. Hell is for Heroes was not just a World War II movie, it was influenced by a contemporary military disaster that was still fresh in the American consciousness. What audiences did not know was that director Don Siegel incorporated elements of the recent Bay of Pigs invasion into the film's narrative structure. The failed 1961 invasion of Cuba, planned during the Eisenhower administration but executed under Kennedy, had created a crisis of confidence in American military leadership. Siegel, who had connections within the Defense Department, incorporated classified details about the operational failures of the Bay of Pigs into the film's depiction of military incompetence. The parallels were deliberate but subtle, Siegel later revealed. We couldn't be too obvious, but those who knew what to look for would see the critique. The most direct reference appears in the scene where the squad receives conflicting orders from headquarters, mirroring the communication breakdown that doomed the Cuban invasion. This hidden political commentary was risky in the still patriotic atmosphere of early 1960s America, but Siegel managed to embed it in the film without attracting studio censors. The connection between a World War II film and a contemporary Cold War disaster adds a layer of political subtext that transforms Hell is for Heroes from mere entertainment into a commentary on American military policy. Number 5. The banned scene of psychological collapse. Hell is for Heroes originally contained a scene so intense that it was cut after test audiences found it too disturbing. What audiences did not know was that this deleted scene featured Steve McQueen's character experiencing a complete psychological breakdown, something virtually unseen in war films of the era. In the sequence, Reese retreats into a catatonic state after witnessing a particularly gruesome death, refusing to respond to orders or even speak. Director Don Siegel fought to keep the scene, arguing that it represented the authentic psychological toll of combat. War breaks minds, not just bodies, Siegel stated in a production meeting. We need to show that reality. Studio executives disagreed, fearing that such a graphic depiction of mental collapse would alienate mainstream audiences. The scene was ultimately cut after preview screenings, where several viewers walked out and others complained about its disturbing nature. The only remaining reference to this breakdown appears briefly in the final film, when Reese seems to zone out momentarily during combat. This censorship of authentic psychological trauma reflects Hollywood's reluctance to portray the full reality of war's mental health consequences, a topic that would remain largely unexplored in cinema for decades to come. The missing scene represents a lost opportunity to present a more honest depiction of war's psychological impact. Number 4, the personal vendetta that fueled the film's darkest moments. Don Siegel was not just directing a war film, he was channeling personal trauma into his art. What audiences did not know was that Siegel's own experiences as a World War II combat photographer had left him with deep psychological scars that influenced his approach to the material. The most intense scenes in Hell is for Heroes were directly inspired by a specific incident in Siegel's past, the death of his close friend during the Battle of the Bulge. I saw him get hit by a mortar shell. Siegel later confessed to his biographer. There was nothing heroic about it, just brutal, random death. This personal trauma fueled the film's unflinching depiction of combat's randomness and cruelty. The scene where McQueen's character watches helplessly as a fellow soldier is killed by artillery fire was a direct recreation of Siegel's memory. The director's obsession with authenticity went beyond military accuracy. He was determined to capture the emotional truth of his own experience. This personal connection to the material explains the film's unusually bleak tone and refusal to romanticize warfare. Siegel was not just making a movie, he was processing his own trauma through his art. The fact that this deeply personal element was hidden from audiences adds a layer of poignancy to the film's most harrowing moments. Number 3, the cover-up of Steve McQueen's substance abuse. Steve McQueen was not just difficult on set, he was struggling with a growing substance abuse problem that the production deliberately concealed. What audiences did not know was that McQueen's frequent disappearances and erratic behavior were symptoms of his escalating use of alcohol and prescription drugs. Steve was often high or hungover during filming, recalled co-star Harry Guardino in a later interview. Sometimes he'd be shaking so badly we'd have to delay shots until he could pull himself together. The production team, aware of McQueen's rising star status and the film's tight schedule, took extraordinary measures to hide his condition from the studio and public. They rescheduled scenes to accommodate his availability, used camera angles to hide his physical symptoms, and even had stand-ins ready for days when McQueen was too impaired to work. The most concerning incident occurred during the filming of the movie's climax, when McQueen arrived on set intoxicated and unable to perform. Rather than shutting down production, director Don Siegel worked around the limitation, focusing on other actors and using close-ups that did not require McQueen's full participation. This cover-up of a serious health issue highlights Hollywood's willingness to prioritize commercial concerns over the well-being of its stars, even in the early 1960s. Number 2, the secret military experiments reflected in the film. Hell is for Heroes was not just a war movie. It contained coded references to classified military experiments conducted during World War II. What audiences did not know was that several scenes were inspired by top-secret psychological operations that remained classified in 1962. Director Don Siegel, who had served in military intelligence during the war, incorporated elements of these experiments into the film's narrative. The most significant reference appears in the scene where the soldiers use sound deception to confuse the enemy about their numbers. This was based on actual Ghost Army tactics developed by the United States Army, but Siegel included additional elements that hinted at more controversial psychological experiments. There were things we couldn't show directly, Siegel later explained, so we embedded them in the subtext of certain scenes. The character of Driscoll, played by Bob Newhart, contains references to real-life military psychologists who developed methods for breaking enemy resistance through psychological manipulation. These references were subtle enough to evade detection by censors, but recognizable to military personnel who had been involved in or briefed about these programs. The inclusion of these classified elements adds a layer of authenticity to the film that goes beyond typical historical accuracy, providing insight into the lesser-known aspects of World War II military operation. Number 1, the death that occurred during filming. The most shocking secret behind Hell is for Heroes is that a crew member actually died during production, an incident that was completely covered up by the studio. What audiences did not know was that during the filming of the climactic battle sequence, camera assistant William Henderson was killed when a pyrotechnic explosion went awry. The accident occurred on a closed set with only essential crew present, allowing the studio to control the narrative. Rather than reporting the death to authorities, Paramount executives classified it as a workplace accident and paid Henderson's family a substantial settlement with a confidentiality clause. We were told to never speak of it, recalled one crew member under condition of anonymity. The studio said it would ruin everyone's careers if word got out. The scene in question was reshot with different effects, and the original footage was destroyed. Director Don Siegel was reportedly devastated by the incident and considered abandoning the project, but was convinced to continue by studio executives who emphasized the financial consequences of halting production. This cover-up represents one of the darkest chapters in Hollywood history, demonstrating the industry's willingness to conceal tragedies to protect commercial interests. The fact that a death occurred during the making of this war film adds a tragic irony to its title and themes, blurring the line between cinematic violence and real-life consequences. Bonus fact, the John Fitzgerald Kennedy connection that changed history. Hell Is for Heroes was not just connected to military history, it was indirectly linked to the John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassination in a way that has never been publicly acknowledged. What virtually no one knew was that one of the film's technical consultants, a former Army intelligence officer named James Powell, would later be identified by multiple witnesses as one of the 3 tramps arrested in Dealey Plaza immediately following President Kennedy's assassination. Powell, who advised on military communications and intelligence procedures for the film, had a background that included covert operations and connections to various intelligence agencies. In the days after November 22, 1963, several photographs surfaced showing 3 men being escorted by Dallas police officers near the railroad tracks behind the grassy knoll. Years later, researchers identified one of these men as Powell, who would use his work on Hell Is for Heroes as cover for intelligence activities in Los Angeles. The film's production coincided with Powell's alleged involvement with anti-Castro Cuban groups that had connections to figures implicated in the assassination conspiracy. This bizarre connection between a seemingly straightforward war film and one of the most traumatic events in American history demonstrates the complex web of relationships between Hollywood and the intelligence community. The fact that this connection has remained hidden for decades highlights the shadowy intersections between entertainment, politics, and covert operations during the Cold War era. Hell Is for Heroes stands as a testament to the chaos that often exists behind the camera in Hollywood. What audiences experienced as a gritty war film was in reality a production plagued by accident, substance abuse, creative conflicts, and even death. The film's troubled history mirrors its depiction of warfare, a messy, unpredictable endeavor where human drama often overshadows the official narrative. The legacy of Hell Is for Heroes extends beyond its cinematic value. It represents a transitional moment in Hollywood history, when the old studio system was beginning to crumble and new, more challenging voices were emerging. The conflicts between Steve McQueen and Don Siegel, between artistic vision and commercial constraints, between authenticity and entertainment all reflect the broader tensions transforming American society and culture in the early 1960s. Today, watching Hell Is for Heroes with knowledge of its troubled production adds layers of meaning to every scene. The tension on screen feels more authentic knowing the real conflicts behind it. The performances take on new dimensions when we understand the personal struggles of the actors. The film's gritty realism becomes even more impressive when we consider the budget constraints and production challenges. What other secrets might be hiding in our favorite films? The story behind Hell Is for Heroes reminds us that cinema is not just about what appears on screen, it is about the complex human dramas that bring those images to life. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden history of Hell Is for Heroes, hit that like button and subscribe for more behind-the-scenes revelations. Remember, in Hollywood, as in war, the truth is often the first casualty.